Hi, everybody. It's Joshua Burkhart from Paths to Transformation. You might know me more from my work with Returning Nature's Rhythm. I'm just getting on today to do a quick rundown about how we can work with the new moon in Virgo coming this Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then also, I'm going to lead a guided meditation at the end to help us find our ritual for Sunday. Virgo is very cued in to the energy of ritual and creating meaning in our everyday life. And so I will actually be in a ceremony on Sunday, a shamanic ceremony that will then initiate me going to high holy days with the Jewish rituals and traditions for the new year. So I won't actually be available for the normal guided meditation that I do with each full new moons over on Patreon. Typically, I do a guided meditation at the time of the new moon or the time of the full moon and release that to Patreon members. This time, I'm going to go through the information and do a guided meditation at the end to help guide us into, hey, how are we going to work with this moon? How can we create our own ritual to work with this moon? What are we being called into? So we're going to go over that today. And we're also going to look at what's going on really right now in the sky and what does this mean for us. In particular, we're going to be focusing on this ritualistic aspect of Virgo. For those who aren't in the Facebook group, Returning to Nature's Rhythm, I would definitely go check that out because I just posted a video on the Pisces Virgo axis, which is activated during this new moon. And it's definitely going to speak to some of the stuff that we're talking about today. Also, on the YouTube channel and on Patreon, I have a couple videos already up about working with Virgo season and integrating Virgo energy. And at the heart of it, what we really have been focusing in on is the rituals that we can create in Virgo and imbuing our lives with greater meaning. Virgo is fantastic for things like task management, time management, project management. And she's got a lot of good energy for all these things, but there are a ton of people out there talking about those things, right? And I work with clients on that one-on-one, but what I really want to speak to is the much less talked about portion of Virgo being very linked to the archetype of the priestess. And so that's what we're really going to be digging into here, because that is what I would love to put into motion with my new moon and would love to encourage other people to put into motion with their new moon. So we have where the planets are going to be on the new moon, right? So it's like 11:11 Pacific Standard Time, Sunday, on the 9th of September. And we've got not the full moon, we got the new moon happening here in Virgo. Mercury has recently entered Virgo, so we've got these three planets there. Now, Mercury is in a grand trine with retrograde Uranus and Taurus and Saturn in Capricorn. And why it's particularly important that Mercury is involved in this trine is because Mercury is also in his exaltation in Virgo and rules over the sign of Virgo. So anytime planets are in the sign of Virgo, Mercury has an influence over them. And right now, Mercury being exalted in the sign of Virgo in a grand trine with the other earth signs definitely brings in a lot of extra energy into this new moon. Now, the new moon itself, the sun and moon, are going to be opposed to Neptune retrograde in Pisces. They're going to be trined over here with retrograde Pluto in Capricorn. And then they're going to be sextiled with Jupiter in Scorpio, who is then also sextiled with Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. So there's a ton of stuff happening in the skies. Of course, there's also things going on with Venus and with Mars, but what I really wanted to focus on are the planets connected right now to the sun and the moon, and then this grand trine. Now, what does this mean, right? There's a grand trine in the earth signs, which means there's a lot of energy flowing between the more physical signs, the more practical signs, right? So you have Capricorn that gets a goal And it's like, we will accomplish that goal, and starts to put things into motion. Taurus carries through with that energy, right? Taurus starts to really make sure that manifests into the world. And then Virgo adapts to anything that comes our way, learns new processes to make sure the project gets done. And the project might have to change a little bit depending on how Virgo has assessed the situation. But Virgo is adapting so that the original plan and goal can occur. So there's a lot of this earth energy, a lot of energy in this physical realm, in this physical world. And then there's a lot of water energy between Neptune and Scorpio, which is much more about the internal world, right? The world of instincts, intuitions, our inner worlds. Now, we can go in 1,000 different directions on how to really put these energies into motion. My friend Aeolean Heart is working with Virgo right now for entrepreneurs working on their startups. And if you haven't checked out her work, definitely check out her class. I think it's something with elemental, and it's all about using this energy to really cement and bring about really healthy, good business practices, because that's very earthy, right? It's very much in the physical realm. And we could be using this energy for our health. We can be using this energy to establish morning routines. We can be using this energy to really break down projects and make sure that projects get done, right? There's so much that we can do. And then we can bring in the water element to assess what is our unconscious relationship to these projects. What are the emotional and unconscious pieces that get in the way of our routines, that get in the way of establishing businesses and our entrepreneurial work, that get in the way of really mastering the work that we do at a company and climbing up the ladder. There's a ton of stuff to do here. I'm going to be focusing on the ritualistic piece, especially in relationship to being our own priests in our own lives, right? Our own priestesses, our own priests. Virgo is a sign that is related to the Vestal priestesses, who were responsible for maintaining Vesta's fire, which was believed to be really like the life source of Rome. If the fires went out, it was seen to be very it was an omen that there were troubling times approaching for Rome, and Rome itself could end or cease to be, right? So it was a very important way to take something as mundane as keeping a fire going, right? Give it spiritual significance and really let it be the spiritual lifeblood of not only the city, but the entire empire. On top of this, Virgo is the only sign. Capricorn's somewhat associated with Inky, but Virgo is the only sign that is actually associated directly with a deity, right? Venus rules over Libra, Venus rules over Taurus, Neptune in the modern day rules over Pisces. Like, all the planets are related to a deity. They rule over different signs. Different signs have different relationships in their mythology to deities. But Virgo is based off of it's so hard for me to pronounce this. I mess up pronunciations often. But Virgo is related to Astraea and Dike, the goddesses of justice. And there's this mythos that back in the Golden Age, the gods lived with humanity, right? Things worked perfectly. And then there were some difficulties that arose, and humanity started essentially rebelling, and the gods started leaving. But the goddess Astraea, and once again, the pronunciation, do not quote me on the pronunciation, it could be very much wrong. I would check it out yourself. Or Dike, depending on Greece or Rome, stayed amongst mortals because she wanted to help mortals and help bring things back to alignment. And she didn't leave until the Silver Age, when finally it got to be too chaotic and she had to leave. So Virgo is cued into this energy of the priestess by the archetype of the Vestal priestesses, but also to this experience of the divinity. Kind of ran down a tangent that I didn't want to run down. So we're going to come back to this. So we look at Virgo with this priestly influence. Across the way is Neptune retrograde in Pisces. I really would check out Returning to Nature's Rhythm and the Facebook Live I did there, between Virgo calling us to greater service, right? In Leo, we sort of discover our divine spark and we're like, hey, like I can shine like the sun, right? Um, I have this divine spark. I'm going to let it shine. And we work on really uncovering our personal narrative. And then Virgo asks us to really take that shine, right? Like take that just kind of ecstasy of like, I'm connected to the divine and apply it in the way that we can really help transform the world, right? Really day by day bring meaning and connect this world to that divine spark, to that spiritual existence, and bring meaning into the world and really help serve the world and bring meaning to our lives as well, right? And Leo, we're like, yes, I'm part of the divine. We can like run around and play, have fun, do our parties, be like, this is so great, revel in it. And in Virgo, it's like, how do we then bring meaning to that? Yeah, you're part of the divine. Great. Now, what sort of story are you writing for the divine, right? How is that serving the world? How is that creating a better life, a better place? How are you refining that divine spark into something that can shine even brighter? And then across the way, in Pisces, you have what at its deepest core is the love of the mystic, right? Where all things dissolve back into that oneness, right? So in a way, in Pisces, you have that concept that is in Hinduism as Brahman, that is in the ancient Egyptian religion as Amen, that it be developed in Greece as Amen Zeus, and developed in later Rome as the relationship of Jupiter or Pan, or this all interconnecting essence beneath things that really evolved out of these older traditions and is very similar to Christian mystic experiences, and mystic experiences all around the world, where there seems to be this divine unity, this divine oneness, right? So you have a call to the oneness and dissolving into the oneness in Pisces, whereas in Virgo, you have almost a differentiation of the oneness, where it's like, yes, there's this ground of being, there's this divine essence beneath it all, but how are we going to shape that, right? Virgo is earth sign, and it's adaptable, mutable earth sign. How do we shape that into particular stories and narratives and scenes and lines and temples and interactions in a finite moment by moment basis? And so there's this dialogue back and forth between really, I don't want to say perfecting because that gets too close to perfectionism, which holds us back, but really sculpting and shaping divine expression in Virgo. And more than just expression, because Leo is more concerned with expression, but in Virgo, particularly shaping divine expression with a purpose, right? And then in Pisces, just really feeling the underlying divine. And so here are the underlying divine. I don't think I pronounced that all too well. So here with this Sun, Moon in Virgo, opposed to Neptune retrograde in Pisces, there is some push and pull between these two concepts, right? Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces and rules really over our dream world and that own inner space. And that realm of vision, but also sometimes delusion, right? And as a planet is retrograde, that is a really good time to really go and look through our past, look at the ways that we have shaped certain narratives, look at the ways that our dreams have played out, look at the ways that maybe certain assumptions about our dreams in the world have led us to things that could be changed for the better, right? Or things that like really led us down the right path. And we can be like, okay, I can trust that instinct, but maybe over here, I needed to rethink things. So for instance, using this and using a personal example, my natal Neptune is in Capricorn, which means it has a very large vision about what I want to be able to contribute to the world. And archetypally, that is a very much a Moses vision of like, let's save the world, create a new society, like, and just like make it so much better, right? And that was very much an obsession, right? And so as long as that dream remained the obsession, I wasn't actually fulfilling anything to make the world a better place, right? Because I wasn't taking the steps to get up that mountain and to have a larger impact on the world. I was kind of just like drowning in the dream and the vision of like the world needs that, like we need to work on society, we need to change things, we need a new culture, we need a new way of operating and relating to each other, and then drowning in the depression of like that's such a monumental task, right? When I was finally able to kind of go Virgo on it, really, and break it down into smaller pieces, I was able to see, like, hey, what do I know really affects the world, right? One of those things for me, like, I know trauma really affects the world. It really affects the way that we psychologically develop, and it really affects the way that we relate to each other. It really affects the way that societies come together and relate to each other. So now I work with people on healing trauma. And that's a huge portion of my coaching work and my hypnosis work. And then also other aspects were like, hey, we're like society is very much out of alignment with the seasons. The society is very much out of alignment with a lot of these spiritual concepts. So I help people with that, right? I work with astrology and I work with the seasons and help people do this work and gain new relationships to their spiritual experiences. But I had to break down that dream. And before I did that, the dream kind of kept me stuck. Another way, and we'll dive into this here in a second, is that Neptune in Capricorn also made me very fascinated with people who I felt were stable and more stable and had more Capricorn energy than I did. Even if they didn't, I thought they did. And so I would become very attached to those people. And we'll dig into why that can be important there. But these are themes, right? These are themes that we can look at, like how are our dreams affecting our lives? How are their dreams, and not just the dreams that we have at night, but really that unconscious world of vision and dream and assumption of a greater narrative affecting our own relationship with the divine and the ways that we bring the divine and the spiritual into the physical and the everyday life, creating meaning in life, right? Another aspect of that huge dream is that because I was like, great meaning would come from this huge epic action, I wasn't allowed to actually enjoy the little meanings that would happen throughout my day because they just seem so small in comparison. So when I was able to pull back from that huge dream and start to really live a day-to-day dream of like, okay, I did a little bit here, I did a little bit there, I cleaned and organized the space in my house, I did something that would be good for me in the future in establishing this business and doing some work here in this business and doing this and doing that, I was able to imbue the everyday acts of my life with a lot more meaning. Dishes can become a cleansing of my soul, and then the cleansing of my mind and my soul becomes my own contribution to the cosmic whole, that the cosmic whole is a little bit less stressed now and a little bit less anxious now and a little bit more settled because I, being a part of this cosmic whole, am a little bit less anxious, a little bit less stressed, a little bit more settled after doing this daily ritual and bringing mindfulness and meaning and spirituality into it. And so now would be a fantastic time to examine those relationships between us and those like deep inner dreams and the expectations that they create and the ways that they have influenced our life and how they might get in the way sometimes of really bringing meaning, and a deep spiritual meaning, particularly our existential meaning, into our lives and into the little acts throughout our day that might seem otherwise mundane. And I think this speaks very well to all this water activity, right? The water activity is going to be that feeling component that actually feels the meaning in these acts, right? Who actually feels the meaning beneath the rituals. And so this is going to be really important as we are working with this energy and working in a way to become our own priest or priestess in our life. And this is where that earth water energy connects so well, right? We have this grand trine and the earth energy. We have Saturn and Capricorn asking us to create new traditions. we've just come out of the Saturn retrograde, wherein we were asked to like kind of figure out how maybe some of the old traditions weren't serving us and release them. Now we can create new traditions and new routines that bring about the world and the vision that we wish to create in Capricorn, and reach that pinnacle of the top of the mountain and be like, yes, we accomplished this thing. And then Uranus and Taurus is asking us how we can do that and what is really getting in the way of that, right? What are old ideas or old relationships with our body, old relationships to our health, old relationships with the desire for stability in the world around us that is getting in the way of our own revolution, and thus evolution? Another flip side to that question could very well be, with Uranus in retrograde, is where are we fighting revolutions that really aren't ours to fight sometimes, right? Where are we rejecting stability for the sake of a revolutionary identity that really maybe actually isn't serving us and isn't serving the world? Right now, with Uranus in this retrograde point in Taurus, now is a good time to kind of ask those questions, right? What revolution has to happen in relationship to my external environment, which is very keyed into Taurus energy, in relationship to my health and my body, which is very keyed into Taurus energy, and the ways that I seek stability? What revolutions have to happen to make that healthier? And what fights have I been fighting that maybe destabilized, that don't need to be destabilized? For instance, when I went through my more like radical anti-capitalist phase, I'm still not the biggest fan of capitalism, but like it was kind of like, I will reject all of this. I'm going to go get a minimum wage job, write poetry, and just be the broke, starving artist. But that created so much instability that I couldn't even really write my poetry, right? I couldn't write my stories because I was too unstable to be able to really sit down and do the work for them. And I had to figure out a new relationship to the larger system, Saturn, and to creating a greater level of stability around me, which meant participating more so in that capitalist system so that I could actually create what I was feeling called to create. Now is a great time to explore these relationships. And because it isn't in the physical realm, it is still deeply connected to our bodies and to the emotional realms underneath. And the more that we pay attention to the unconscious, the more, which is huge here with Jupiter and Scorpio, and Venus is also recently entered Scorpio, the more that we pay attention to the unconscious, the more we see the ways that it shapes the ways that we act in the external world and in our life and in relationship to our physical environments. So this is where that Jupiter-Scorpio relationship can happen, right? Because Jupiter right now is sextile, or will be sextile the sun and moon on the day of the new moon, and trine to Uranus retrograde in Pisces. Jupiter is the teacher, right? And in Scorpio, it's learning through transformation. And it's also learning through the deep, deep dives within. So this is where we can examine some of our dreams, our physical actions, and how they relate to images of the divine within us. So to backtrack to the priestly archetype, right? Most spiritual traditions throughout time had multiple ways to call on the divine, right? They had different aspects to call on, whether they be polytheistic, even monotheistic, pantheistic, henotheistic. They had different ways of summoning a particular attribute at a particular time. So in ancient Greece, you have different names for the different gods, right? Like, so we've got Zeus, we've got Hermes, we've got a whole bunch. We've got Artemis, we've got Apollo, we've got all these different names, right? But each one of those gods also had different ways of referring to them. So there's Aphrodite Urania, there's Aphrodite Pandemos. When you call on Aphrodite Urania, you're calling to the heavenly love, right? It's a very transcendent love. When you're calling on Aphrodite Pandemos, it's a much more worldly love, right? And there were believed to be different ways that these interacted in society, different ways that you would interact with that deity, and aspects of that deity, and different things that you would call on that deity for. And all of the gods had different names, different functions that went with those names. In Judaism, you have a whole range of names, right? You have El Elyon, you have El Shaddai, you have Elohim, you have Yad-He Vad-He, you have Adonai, which really was Lord, but like would be used in different ways. And you just have a range of a lot of different names, and each name refers to a different aspect of the deity. So even though, and some people might argue that it wasn't monotheistic for a large portion of Judaism, and I can go with that and support that, but if we want to look at it as monotheistic, and in modern Judaism it tends to be more monotheistic, you still have different names to refer to different parts. Like Elohim tends to refer more to the creator, right? Yad-He Vad-He tends to refer more to the particular aspect of the divine that created a contract and a relationship with the state of Israel, and showed his divine will through that, right? In Catholicism, you had God the Father, you have the Holy Ghost, you have Mary, you have Yeshua, Jesus, you have all the different saints. So when you're traveling, there's a saint for traveling. When you are studying, there's a saint for studying. You have a whole range of different angels. If you need protection, there's Saint Michael, and there's Angel. I think they're kind of essentially the same. I'm not as familiar with Catholicism, but the point here being that most spiritual traditions throughout time have given us different techniques and different names to relate to different aspects of the divine experience, and as above, so below, so to the human experience. And in certain newer editions religions, like Protestantism, which threw away the saints and focuses a lot less on the angels, or different New Age traditions, we kind of lose that differentiation that allows us to really call on a particular attribute. And that makes ritual a lot more difficult, because you're kind of just calling on the whole thing. When in ritual, sometimes it's very important to be able to call on a particular aspect, right? So I work a lot with the Roman tradition. So when I'm cleaning house, I call on Hestia or Vesta, right? Because it's the keeper of the hearth, it's the keeper of the home. And I can devote that cleaning to that energy of cleaning the inside hearth and home, cleaning the external space, right? And it makes that easier. And then I have different names for different things, and I have my own personal experiences that I've created connections to different names and different traditions. And I use a lot of Hebrew names and traditions. If we're going to do this work of becoming the priestess or priest of our lives, it can really behoove us to have some of that differentiation, and so as to better name the aspects of the divine, which so perfectly works with Mercury being in Virgo, right? Because Mercury is the logos. It's speaking, it's word, it's the power of word. It's the fact that there is a power behind naming a thing. And when you have that ability to name that thing, and name that thing so precisely, we're able to better tap into it. And so we can do this in any number of ways, right? We can make up our own names, right? Let's say you're Christian, right? You have Jesus, you have Yeshua. Like, you can go through different parts of the story and be like, hey, I'm calling on the Jesus of the temple who like whipped out the money exchangers. Like, I'm calling on like social radical Jesus right now to help me out with something. Or I am calling on the Jesus of the cross, who was so forgiving as to even forgive the people who were crucifying him and asking God to forgive these people for they know not what they do, right? Or I'm calling on the Jesus of Friends who would like eat and drink with what was the tax collectors and the prostitutes and people who socially were not very acceptable at the time, right? And so you could create just through the different narratives, like different relationships to archetypal beings for yourself. You can look through different mythologies and find the ones that resonate you. You can look and do dream work, see who comes to you in dream work. You could do free writing or active imagination and see who comes to you through active imagination. That's what Jung's entire Red Book is, right? Is like sitting there, meditating, working with his dreams and being like, now there's this mythological figure that seems to represent this archetype, and then working with that figure. And this is where I will backtrack here. And I said that Scorpio and Jupiter can really help us figure out when we look at certain actions in our lives, it can help us figure out where we might want to draw from certain archetypes. So for instance, in my life, in my past codependent behaviors, I was very drawn to people who felt like they had very strong Capricorn energies and felt very stable. Why? I was looking for a father figure, right? And through journaling and therapy and dream work and all this stuff, it became more and more clear that the codependency and obsession with particular people was looking for stability from a father figure. So I was able to then be like, okay, I need to activate this father archetype within myself. And I started doing that work. And at first it was like, what would this particular person I have been codependent do in this situation? And half the time that would get the situation going well, right? And half the time it wouldn't because they were human and they didn't always make the right decisions, right? So, but it was enough for me to kind of get started and feel a little bit more stable and be like, okay, I can be decisive in this decision because so-and-so would be decisive in this decision. And then with time, other archetypes started to present themselves. And in active imagination, dream work, and writing, Heracles, for instance, stepped up and became much more of a father figure aspect. And I was able to be like, okay, what would Heracles recommend to me to do in this situation, right? Like, recognize things are hard, times are tough. Heracles himself went mad, slayed his family, and when he came out of it, he pressed on to be a better person, right? To better the world, to seek redemption. So when things get rough, I now imagine like Heracles showing up and being like, okay, how are we going to work with this? Like, right? How are we going to press on and make the world a better place, right? And when I need a mother archetype and need to kind of just sob there a little bit, I've got my mother archetypes. So we can look into some of the ways that we interact with other people in this physical existence and some of our addictions and neuroses and codependency and start to find underneath those the layers of the archetypes being activated that really need to be developed, right? Like they're the shadow side beneath all those experiences. And we can really look into that shadow side to see what needs to be developed and integrated into our lives, and then put new faces on them, new names to them, so that we can then activate them in our rituals. And it becomes a very powerful process that allows us to do a lot of transformation in our inner world, and through working in our inner world, transformation in the outer world, which is so much the theme of a new moon, right? You've got the moon who rules the inner world, and then you have the sun who rules the consciousness in the outer world. So you have the inner world, outer world, unconscious, conscious relationship. And it just so happens this time around to be very connected with the physical realm through the earth signs and the water realm through Scorpio and Neptune. So what is the challenge, right? I am going to challenge you for this new moon to create a ritual to really, well, you can set different intentions for it. Create the ritual to do what you want. I would recommend and present to you perhaps creating a ritual that puts you as the priest or priestess of your own life. Whether you believe in the divine, or it's kind of the cosmic whole, or it's a set of universal principles, you can still be working with the archetypes within, and the archetypes within yourself, and be the priest within your own inner life and the priestess within your own inner life. And so establishing a ritual that empowers you to do that. And then through the guided meditation, what we're going to be doing is working on finding the ritual that works, does that for us, right? Not something that like is just from the tradition we come from, not something that was handed to us by another person, but something that's going to have meaning in your own life, right? And speak to you in your own life. So I am going to pause this real quick so that I can get in the zone for that. And then we will launch into that. And if you have any questions about what I've written here, you can ask on the comments, reach out to me. I'm going to be posting this up in a few different places: Returning to Nature's Rhythm, the Facebook group, YouTube, probably a few other groups, and the Patreon page. And reach out. And if you want to do work on stuff like this with me, I do work one-on-one with clients, but I also have a group coaching service that I do, it called This is Alchemy in the Returning to Nature's Rhythm Patreon group, where you can be doing this work with other people going through the seasons and doing this work. And we meet every other week with that, or twice a month actually, with that, to do this work. And then also join the community Returning to Nature's Rhythm, because there are a lot of people chatting and bringing up their explorations and their insights and talking over all this. And it's really a fantastic community. So I'm going to take a second to reset, enter into more of the guided meditation state. We'll do that. And what we're really going to be diving into is looking at what is the ritual we're called to be the priest or priestess in our own lives, and to start this process of bringing meaning into the world around us and within us, and gaining new forms of relationship to new aspects of the divine, right? Really differentiating it so we can interact with it so much. And we're back to dive into this new moon meditation. If you need to stop the video, hit pause, go get water, go grab some food if you're hungry, use the bathroom, do that. If you started this video when it was nice and relaxing where you were, and suddenly your partner, your kids, or some pets or the neighbors are making some noises, feel free to pause this and bring it back in a time when you have a little bit more space, a little bit more room to be doing this work. It's setting is super important for this sort of work. So make sure that you're able to make that space. And especially when we're talking about things like ritual, right? It's so important to have set and setting, and to really approach ritual with intention and with aligned intention. So now I suddenly have to cough. I invite you to create that space for yourself. Take care of your needs. And then when you're ready, come back and we will enter into the new moon meditation. Today, like I said, it's going to be a little bit different because normally I host these over on Patreon for subscribers, and it's during the actual experience of the moon, right? It's during the actual full alignment of the full moon or the new moon. Here in today's new moon meditation, we're actually going to be looking ahead to the alignment to figure out what rituals we're going to bring forth during that time. And as I said, really looking for what rituals we can bring forth to really initiate ourselves as our own priestesses or priests. And it doesn't have to be in relation to a particular divine spiritual tradition or a particular way of looking at the divine, or even assuming the divine, right? It could be very much your relationship to your own inner world and archetypes, and the way that you can hold meaning and space and ritual in your own life. And so we're looking for the ritual to really initiate that, because this new moon is going to be fantastic for doing that work. How we're going to go about that is essentially we're going to work on relaxing the body so we can enter into that more meditative state. And then we're going to use the relationship with the sun and the moon to actually to act essentially like as lenses, right? And then we're also going to work with the Mercury archetype because Mercury does rule over Virgo. And the new moon, so the sun and the moon are both in Virgo. Mercury is exalted in Virgo right now. And in case you don't know much about exaltations, it means like the Mercury energy is at its peak right now, right? It's the most aligned with the way that it naturally expresses itself. So it's a good time to tap into that. And what we're going to be using is Mercury as that archetype, that messenger, traditionally the messenger of the divinity or the gods, to be the messenger from our inner realm to tell us and show us what ritual is going to speak to us the most, right? Because ritual is a powerful blend between, I mean, there's that fire spirit element, but there's also that earth practical, we're ritualistically expressing ourselves in the physical world. And it has to have that water element that we have been talking about in this video, that gives it emotional meaning and power and strength and magnetism. So we're looking for that, the initiation of ourselves into the priesthood of our own life, so that we can start to really work on bringing meaning into the mundane and meaning into our everyday life and infusing the everyday life with this concept of spirituality. So if you need to take a break real quick, do that. Otherwise, let's just start with a few deep breaths. Finding any points of tension or strain in the body and simply breathing into them as you allow yourself to relax. Perhaps feeling your body settle down, sinking into the surface beneath you. Finding any points of tension or strain and breathing into them. I know for me, I get a flare up on my right shoulder. If it's muscle related, you can try applying pressure there for a moment and just bring your awareness to that area of the body. Apply some pressure there, right beneath it, mainly if it's muscle oriented, because sometimes other pains, you don't want to apply direct pressure. And if it's another kind of pain, you can simply breathe into it and breathe in your awareness. Or if it's discomfort or stress or strain, just allow your mind's awareness to flow through your body, to take note of what's going on there. As we're working some with Mercury today, and it is Virgo season, if you like, you can ask your body, what story is it holding on to? Oftentimes, tension, stress in the body, discomfort, it's a way of the body remembering something that crossed a boundary or an expectation of the body. Maybe it was in a place that didn't feel safe, or maybe it was worked too hard, or didn't get enough sleep, or was tweaked in a weird position and never wants to go back to again. You can simply ask the body, what is it holding on to? Was that social engagement uncomfortable and put the body on edge? Or maybe it's another concern of the body. Is whatever it is, you can ask the story, and then before the body starts to repeat itself, as the mind and body often do, you can thank it for the story. Tell it you're working on this, because here today we really are committing ourselves to work on transforming our lives as we do this work to bring in this mindfulness of our everyday lives and our ability to turn mundane acts into ritual and to be the priests or priestesses of our own lives. We are taking on the work to really make sure our mind and bodies are aligned so we can fulfill this work, so we can do this work, so that we can imbue our lives with meaning and imbue the world around us with meaning and that relationship to the sacred. So I invite you to breathe in and let your body know that, yes, I will attend this, I will take care of this, because having healthy boundaries, having a healthy relationship to our body, having a healthy relationship to our mind is how we become good, healthy priests and priestesses. As we simply breathe in and breathe out and let our mind's awareness travel the body and find any other points of tension or stress or strain, any other points of discomfort, and ask what's going on there. What story is there to be told? And when the story is done being told, we can thank the body. And when we thank the body and address its concerns, if you already have a plan to change these things around, if it's something you already know needs doing, like my shoulder just gets raised up a little bit higher. And the more I'm able to relax it, the more I'm able to calm my body, the easier it is on it. So I'm putting those in motion, and I will see success there eventually. So we can thank our bodies for these insights. And if it's a new insight, something we didn't know about, then we can tell the body that we will get to this. We will process this information. We will come up with a game plan. Virgo is so very good at that. Taking in new information, coming up with new ways and adapting to situations, coming up with new ways to work with them. And so we can invite this energy in and tell our body that we will address this. And then when we've acknowledged the body, when we tell the body that we will in fact address this, then we can let it go. Let go of the stress, let go of the strain, let go of the discomfort, and simply let our muscles and our bodies relax and go loose. Let our bodies themselves stretch out and find their natural form, no longer clenched, no longer tight. Just like a voicemail or email in your inbox or old parchment that we could burn as soon as the message was received, we can press delete. And with that delete the discomfort, the stress, the strain, as we feel our bodies relaxing. Making space, making room for the work that we're doing today as we call in our image of the highest good. Finding our relationship to the highest good here and today within us. Maybe it's something we created in our hands that will serve to make our lives better or the lives of others better. Something we fashioned or something we wrote up or painted to bring joy to others, or a magic trick we did that brought a smile of delight to a child's eyes. Maybe it's something we said to comfort someone today, or some wisdom we were able to share. Or maybe it's the silence we were able to gather so we could truly hear someone who needed to be heard. Maybe it's the journaling we did today to really process something within ourselves, or the way we committed and actually took action for our own health and well-being and exercise, or in the foods that we eat. Maybe it's just a small act that we did for a friend or a loved one, or simply getting out of bed, because sometimes getting out of bed is a monumental success. Just recognizing the ways that we are making our lives better, feeling that out in our body and finding if there's a point that really resonates with this, and then breathing into that point. The body is relaxed, relaxing more and more with each and every breath, making space and making room for this experience of that highest good to flow through us. As I invite you in your mind's eye to see the imagery of that brightness of the highest good spreading through us, infusing our muscles and our bones, infusing our organs and our body until we are shining with this light of the highest good, shining into the world around us. And if you choose, you can imagine also seeing sources of the highest good in the world around you. In moments we were grateful, and experiences we are grateful for, people we are grateful for, ways that we've seen good shine in this world. The mind, because it is the monkey mind, might try to be bringing up counter evidence, and I just invite you to breathe in and breathe out and let all that go. A list of things that aren't so great. There's time and space to address those things, but that time and space isn't really now. Here today, what I invite you to do is to recognize the good within you, see it spread, and allow it to anoint you. While recognizing the good in the world around, see it spread and allow it to anoint the world around. Whether experiences be pleasant or unpleasant, we can still learn from them. We can still grow from them. We can still find some level of good to create from them. Allowing our challenges and difficulties, allowing the hard times to be the pressure that creates the transformation within us. Getting diamonds out of all those rough rocks. And so seeing this light in the world around, seeing the light within you spreading, growing, I invite you to open up to this experience of that highest good just transforming everything around it. As we breathe in and breathe out, anointing the process that we're going through, setting the intention that what we're going to ask from our this visionary state is to see the ritual that will truly initiate us as the priests or priestesses of our own life, of our own inner world, and let this all be blessed with this light of the highest good. And I invite you to allow yourself to see this light in any way you wish, any color you wish. Maybe it's bright, bright blue. Maybe it's violet. Maybe it's green and filled with life. Maybe it's bright light like the sunlight, or maybe it's the brightness of a full moon at night and the sheltering, nurturing energy of the nighttime coolness filled with stars. Light or dark, it can all be part of the highest good. Because all things can be transformed in the highest good. As we breathe in and breathe out, I invite you to imagine here today, moon rising in your inner world, rising up into your inner world. Traditionally, the moon is associated with the left-hand side of the body, but you can imagine the moon coming from any direction, really. In front of you, behind you, to your right, to your left, just simply rising. And when the moon is directly overhead, invite you to breathe in and feel the moon descend, shining with this light of the highest good. Moon descends through your crown, down behind your forehead or your third eye, and enlightening the spaces here, attuning the light of that inner world to true vision, to truth and compassion. As this light descends down through the throat, the things that we speak, the ways that we interact with the world through our voice and through sound, and ways that we hear. As light descends through the chest, the ways that we connect with others, and the emotions that arise within us, down into the stomach, the space that the moon herself rules, and the digestive system. And you can imagine that moon shining here, illuminating the inner world. That can be any scene that calls to you, perhaps being on the ocean beach, in the sand, or if you wish, amongst the crags and the cliffs. Water rushing up against the stone, spraying beautiful white waves and foam. Or perhaps you're in the mountains, surrounded by gorgeous forests, blowing in the wind and the breeze. Or perhaps you're in the valley beside a river. Just imagining your inner world here now, illuminated by the shine of the moon. As you do so, I invite you to play with some of that magic from Pisces across the way, where Neptune is hanging out. And imagine now that this moon, this illuminated body in the inner world that is giving you sight of this inner world and really allowing you to see it through her light. Imagine that the moon is now here, centered in your stomach, and becomes, in its own way, a lens for you to see through. You can see within and you can see without. In fact, this lens becomes, in its own way, almost a tunnel, opening doors to you, opening the door to the inner realm to you. So that you can see inside your body and see the archetypes living there, see the world created there, the naturescapes and the temples, the points of reinforcement, fortresses where there are things that are held on to within, places within the psyche that felt they needed to be guarded, places within the psyche fully exposed to the world. Fairgrounds and spaces to simply celebrate. The whole world lives within places that are guarded, the places that are celebrated, the places that are sacred, the places that are traversed by the wandering mind, exploring the thoughts and emotions within. There are libraries for all the information that you've taken in. There are people speaking the things you've heard. Prophets showing visions of your future. Archetypes and other ways of relating to the world within. creating different experiences of self, weaving different stories. The moon can act as a lens to see this inner world, but can also act as a doorway. So, here today, I invite you to imagine the moon within your stomach where she rules that natural part of the body, opening up this door to this inner world as slowly you see also here now in your mind's eye the sun rising. Traditionally, the sun is associated with the right hand side. We can see it rising from the left or the right or in front of us or behind us, rising up slowly into high noon, bringing even more and more light to this realm of the inner world, also dawning our awareness of the world around us so that we can see this inner kingdom within us in relationship to the room around us or the space we find ourselves in, whether there's furniture in the space around us or we're at a park with our back against a tree or we're anywhere, really, we can start to see these two worlds in relationship to each other, the world without and the world within, as the sun reaches its point at high noon and begins to descend down through our crown, down behind our forehead or the third eye, down through the throat, down in the chest, where it is said the sun rules as the heart. And just as the moon was a lens, was a doorway to the inner realm, so to allow the sun in your mind's eye and this symbol system that you're playing with to be the lens and the doorway to the realm around you. And whether or not you've ever gone in to have your eyes checked, I invite you to imagine that these two lenses are being aligned in a way that an eye doctor would align one lens to another to bring into clarity and focus a greater vision. So that the moon and the sun open up the inner and the outer worlds, aligning them to create a greater vision, to open a door, to open this tunnel space. Because here today, I invite you to imagine here now this tunnel moving from you in this inner world out through the physical world, aligning these two things together into a space beyond, into a space of the unknown, a space where new insights can reach us, a space where new ideas can be generated, something that hasn't been thought of before, something that hasn't been dreamed of before, and now there is open through this alignment of the sun and the moon within you, making space, making room to open the door to Mercury, this archetype of a messenger, of a teacher, of someone who can teach us and bestow upon us this knowledge, this inner knowledge of the right ritual for us to use for the new moon. And this image of Mercury can be whatever you choose, whatever calls to you the most. Maybe it's very much in the tradition of the traditional Mercury with wings on his sandals or winged from his shoulders, depending on what artist depicted. Maybe this Mercury is a man or a woman or some third gender. Maybe this Mercury is really actually someone you looked up to as a child, as someone who seemed to have all the answers, or a historical figure or another mythological figure that seems to you to speak as a voice of wisdom, voice that can truly understand how the inner and outer worlds can come together to create the perfect ritual for you. Maybe this Mercury looks exactly like you, and it's simply an aspect of yourself. Whatever image you choose, this Mercury is now entering from the other side of the tunnel. This inspiration is entering in through the doorway of the sun and this moon within you, through the clarity of the vision that these lenses created. As I invite you here today to sit and ask this image, this Mercury, or whatever other name has been given to this archetype of wisdom and messenger, what ritual can I put into motion? What can I do with the new moon to initiate myself as the priest or priestess of my own life? To bring meaning into my life, into the acts throughout my day, to make my life sacred, and to remember this. As here today you breathe in and breathe out, receiving this message, seeing anything that needs to be involved in this ritual. Maybe it's something you write, maybe it's something you do, maybe there are components for an altar that need to be gathered, maybe it's an interpretive dance that needs to be done, or a sigil that needs to be crafted. Maybe it's a mantra that needs to be spoken, just an act around the house that needs to be done to set it all right, all perfectly aligned. Whatever it is, I invite you to hear out this aspect of yourself that can act as messenger, guide, and give insight, and to remember the ritual. And to breathe in and breathe out and set the intention that this ritual will, in fact, invoke this initiation of yourself as the priest or priestess of your own life. Breathing in, breathing out. Letting that awareness fill you, that awareness in those realms of water, this awareness in this realm of earth, that yes, this ritual will in fact invoke a deep meaning within by acting upon the world without. As you breathe in and breathe out and thank this image of Mercury for the insight that has been given to you, anchoring these energies of the sun and the moon within you, within your stomach, within your heart and your chest, feeling as you draw nutrition from it, as your blood beats with this energy, nurturing your mind, nurturing your body. And now here ingraining your mind and body with the meaning of this ritual that you will enact to initiate yourself, to bring more meaning into your life, more of a sense of the sacred. As you breathe in, breathe out, allowing these energies to integrate within you, allowing this vision to integrate within you. When you need, you can stretch. Feel the energy move through you and feel it really sink in. And I invite you to hold whatever experience this is, this kind of energy that you have, and realize that this can be invoked again when you do your own ritual. And that your ritual will be empowered in these many realms of being. As you breathe in and breathe out, feeling yourself completely back in the room. Here now with this answer of the ritual that is right for you. Blessings on the work that you do, blessings on the new moon, blessings on the way that you put this ritual together, and all that it brings about for you. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.